Okay, so we are back. Hopefully, it's not too loud. Let me know in the chat how everything sounds and looks, but should be up and live. Gosh, whatever I caught, not good. It's lasted so long. I do feel much better, but I still can feel like, I don't know, the lingering effects of whatever it was that I caught a couple weeks ago. But um, life goes on. And I kind of want to have a kind of shorter stream this week because starting a bit late. And also, the last stream that we did last week was over, I think it was like 5.5 hours. That's we haven't had one that long in a long time. And honestly, I didn't even get to all the links that I wanted to get to. And reference last week, we were discussing Clee Irwin's work on emergence theory and kind of the resurgence of the incorporation of a model that is centered around consciousness in physics and in science. And this is definitely where science is going. But it was a great stream. I didn't even get to all the links though that I wanted to show. I had to skip some. So there is another epic stream that I am working on, but I didn't want to do two very, very intense, 5-hour streams in a row. But I'm working on a stream that maybe it will be not next week, but probably the week after, because there won't be a stream next week. I'm seeing family. So, but I'll try and release some clips. There is going to be a stream the week after, though, and maybe we'll do the long one that I'm working on then. Also, last night, I went on Owen Benjamin's live stream to discuss AI and the theological, I guess, implications of it and the impacts of it on humanity and the metaphysical, mystical, I guess, stories about the golem in some ancient texts, and we discussed that a little bit, which is, as I've talked about on here, I believe an ancient description of eventually AGI, which is probably also the same thing that is described as the Antichrist in theology and the Dajjal, but it is. It was a great talk. The link is below to that talk if you want to check that out. Always a good time to go on Owen's stream, and I definitely recommend checking it out. So tonight, though, we're going to talk about the fine-tuning argument and a clip that Alex O'Connor had put up of an exchange between him and Brian Greene. Always interesting to listen to Brian Greene. He kind of represents just the epitome of the academic opinion, and yet does it with grace and humility in a way that I think is, worthy of discussing with respect, but also, I guess, critique. So, but please hit the like button. It really helps fuel the algorithm. And sorry for getting started so late, but I appreciate everybody who's here and is going to join live. So definitely comment any questions that you have in the live chat, and I will make a special effort to focus on them a bit tonight because, I want it to be a more informal stream, and we just went so long last week and on the clips, and there's so much to talk about involving emergence theory, and we're going to be discussing assembly theory soon. That's going to be another long one, and I just there are some things that are like close, some theories that are just getting close in science, and they're close enough to where they're really worth talking about, but they're also not close enough to where there's a lot to discuss, and we'll talk about it. But and it's funny, there's Clee Irwin, which is emergence theory, and Lee Cronin, which is assembly theory, and it is odd that for some reason does sound similar. But like I said, please hit the like button, comment any questions that you have in the live chat, and I'll make an effort to answer them. But we can get to one of the first clips in a minute. But what I want to talk about is, just there's so many clips of physicists, and I guess you could say they're more like physics communicators in the way that people think about them. But Brian Greene and Michio Kaku especially do have works that they work on. They're both work in string theory, and whether or not you agree with string theory, at least they're working on something. Whereas they're not just a science communicator, quote unquote. They are actually working on, and proposing their own theories, even though I think that they're wrong. But we're going to talk about some of their statements that I have links that I'm going to share, and just kind of discuss what is just fascinating about how we put so much expectation on people who call themselves physicists today. And I talked about this on Owen's stream last night, about how just academia and our education system, and if you follow this channel, you know that I touch on this a lot on here. It really, the more entrenched you get into it, the worse at thinking you seem to get, but the more you're expected to know how to think. And there's some type of, investment that people make into the education system. And once they've reached a certain point in that, you're going to have to, or you don't have to, but you usually do end up kind of, just looking to and relying on the establishment, the academic establishment, to basically tell you what is true. Because if you don't trust them to tell you what is true, then you really also can't trust them to, then you're kind of acknowledging that they shouldn't be trusted to be your accreditation source. So it's kind of like this trap that people get themselves into. And it's kind of the reason that I've always hesitated in going back and pursuing any kind of, postgraduate degree, even in philosophy or something like that. But I definitely see it, and it's a big problem. I mean, it's people are giving up their agency. They are relying on the institutions to tell them what is true, and they're not actually thinking about whether or not what they're hearing or what they're saying or repeating even makes sense. And we talked about AI on Owen's stream last night, and just how what's so amazing about these LLMs is not how impressive it is that they can write an essay at a college level. It's that it doesn't require any thinking to write an essay on a college level. It's interesting. I was talking to my wife and showing her these articles that I pulled up last night. And I was Googling some animals and just I wanted a question answered about some type of animal. And what I realized is that every link had the same article about this animal on the first page as the content of the page, even though the page was different. It was multiple different pages. There was no hints or reason for them to contain the same article, but they did contain the same article. And both of the articles were entirely written in a way to just take up as much attention and time as possible. I was getting exhausted reading it, just trying to get to one answer, and it didn't even contain the answer that I was looking for. And none of these pages were written by anybody that actually had experience with the species that I was trying to learn about. And it was just pages where I could tell they used AI. And so not only did somebody use AI to basically generate an article on some species of animal, they then just copied it I don't know if it's different people who then just copied what somebody else had written, and somebody else copied what they had written, and somebody else copied what they had written, basically like what the news does. Sorry, the news. I don't know if that was very loud, but I apologize. But this is happening now in, your attempt to understand or to research anything. It's just a series of people copying other people who are now just using AI, which really just copies from other people. And you don't know what sources these dynamic algorithms, which, these LLMs are using. And it's not going to get any better, I don't think. I think we're at the golden age of AI's ability to be truthful with us. I'm kind of like going on a tangent here, but this is what we talked about more last night. But it's actually, I think, pretty important. And, as we talked about this compounding effect last night on the stream with Owen, where an AI will reference a picture of an animal that was generated by AI, and then it will create a new image that was of that animal. And then it will create somebody will create another image based on that image. And eventually it's like, what are you even referencing? When I first was, exploring like Midjourney, when it was kind of becoming popular on here live, we were trying to generate pictures of a ladybug, I remember. And it looked really good. And I was like, this is great because you can use this for, generating basically stock images. You don't have to pay story blocks or Shutterstock, a fortune anymore. You can just go and say, I want a ladybug on a white background, and that's what I was doing. But then if you know ladybugs with any kind of like understanding at all, then you know that they have 6 legs, and it was generating them with 8. And you wouldn't even know if you've never seen a real ladybug. Most people have seen a real ladybug, but how many people have really looked? And also, like, how well do you understand insects and versus arachnids and things like that? But it's not really the point. But it does matter eventually, where now when somebody goes and posts that picture of a ladybug, but it's got 8 legs, everything else looks good unless you're an entomologist and you're really seeing the little tiny differences in morphology. Then somebody goes and generates more images based on this image that was generated that's fake, and you don't even know that it's fake, and the AI doesn't know it's fake because the AI doesn't know anything, and it's like weird, that phrase of like, I think it's something like, how far we've fallen from God. It's like we really kind of are exponentially going to fall from truth with these LLMs and these image generators and these video generation programs. And I'm not against them, but I think that it's important to use them for specific things and kind of to avoid using them for specific things. And, we talked about how last night about how in Islam particularly, there's like a prohibition on trying to recreate sentient beings. It's interesting. Images of sentient beings. You're not supposed to paint images of sentient beings. And if you do, you're not supposed to it's supposed to be abstract and like obviously not an attempt to be realistic. And I never understood that until AI image generation started to get popular. And I'm starting to really see the wisdom in that. And what's interesting is that when in Islam, when they're describing like what is haram versus what is ostensibly kosher, I think it's halal to create with clay or paint or AI. They say you cannot be recreating images of sentient beings, but what they don't include in there is plants, which is kind of it supports my theory in sentient singularity theory that plants are not sentient. I thought that was very interesting. It's like plants are considered okay to paint and create, but not animals. and not people. But what's interesting is like would cells be okay to create and paint and stuff? And because I think they're sentient, so I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but it is just interesting to see this kind of unfold. I don't know what the implications are, going forward of, creating images of cells, but eventually the same thing would happen. Is like it's an image of an image of an image of an image. And what's kind of funny is whoever was generating the thumbnail for Owen's stream last night with me didn't just pull my image from, and I'm not mad or anything like that. It's actually worked perfectly for what we were discussing. It was like a perfect example. So I'm actually, glad it happened, but it's very interesting because they didn't just pull an image, a picture of me from my Twitter. I'm guessing that they asked Grok to generate a thumbnail about, AI and the Golem and, with Tyler Goldstein as a guest. And what's interesting is that this is the image that it created. This is fascinating, actually. Is this. And so look at me. If you, don't know me, you're like, oh yeah, that looks like Tyler from a distance. This looks like me. This looks like me right here. But not that. That's not me. I have blue eyes, guys. I have blue eyes. My eyes are not that shape. What's odd is that this guy's eyes, whoever it is, was pulled from someone's picture online that it, identified as likely being, Tyler Goldstein. And it's odd that these eyes actually look familiar. I don't know whose they are, but they're not mine. And it was like the perfect example of that is like and it's like, it even got, what I'm wearing correct as far as just the picture on my website on sentientsingularity.com and on Twitter. It got a lot right. That looks like me. Even that whole thing right there. And that, but not that. And that little thing, that little change, now any AI program that goes and references for pictures of me and it sees this, it's going to pull from this, and it can only get worse from here because you can only build lies from lies. You can only build falsity from falsity. You can't build truth from that which is false. And this is going to have massive implications. And so it literally cannot get better than it is now. This is the first AI generated image of me on the internet, as far as I am aware. Every other image is a photo of me on the internet. And now there's one AI generated image of me. And any other AI generated images of me will now not just be referencing photos of me, but will also be referencing AI generated images. And so as the proportion of what is an AI generated image versus what is a photograph gets, shifted, it can only get more unrealistic. And so, this idea that, the AIs are going to get better. They're going to be better at generating images. No, they're not. Not of specific things that are, or specific people and specific beings. You can get them better at, making sure that hands don't look as weird, maybe people are more likely to have 5 fingers. But what happens when somebody actually has 4 fingers because they're missing one because it got ripped off in some accident? And there's a photo of them online, and then you create an AI generated image of them, and you've built in this artificial, bias to make sure that, there's 5 fingers there. And then that person's generated, and maybe with somebody else's ears, but it mostly looks like them. And now they have 5 fingers again because there's an artificial bias built into the system to make sure that there's, 5 fingers in a image. We are not. When people say, "Oh, the AIs will get better," it's not. This is just the beginning. Just wait; it'll look like you in the future. It's not about that. It's not about the competency of the AI image generation software. It's that it doesn't know what's a photo and what's an AI generated image. There are certain programs that you can use that can scan for that, and I wonder if that is going to be part of this in the future. But at the same time, eventually, I think it's going to get to the point where you won't be able to tell if it's an AI generated image, and neither will AI, just by the nature of, even photographs and how these cameras work. I mean, when people take pictures of themselves and they, I don't know, it's got Face App or whatever it's called, where it just smooths out your face. It's like, that's AI. It's just it was just the beginning of it. And I think that we can only go downhill from here. Every day we stray further from God. That's the quote that I was looking for. And you can also say, every day we stray further from the truth as a society with AI. I think that it's an amazing tool, and I am going to use it, and I'm going to try and use it responsibly. And I'm going to probably try with and not use it to generate images of sentient beings anymore. And I think that it's like contributing to the rot. But I also think that me stopping is not going to stop it. But sometimes we might do it in a stream just for the sake of making a point. But we're not. It would be, I would announce it. I don't want to contribute to that, even in an unknowing way. But it is fascinating, like, look at me here, like, look at my eyes, and then look at this guy. Whose eyes are that? And the thing is like, that's someone's eyes. That's not nobody's eyes. It can only pull from what exists, and then make something that doesn't exist. So by just a hodgepodge. And I have this video that I made many years ago, way before this channel even existed, but it is on this channel. It's like Science of the Messiah, I think it's called, and it's about AI. And I've changed how I word things now, but there's still good points in that video, and I talk about on there how, like, it doesn't know whether or not it's looking through. Even if it was truly intelligent and it was a technological sentience, which is what AGI really is, how is it going to know whether or not it's looking through a camera or looking at a picture? Like, how does it know that it's looking at you through your iPhone versus it's just watching a video online of you, or whether or not it's watching an AI generated video of someone that might be, looking like you, but isn't you. It's an interesting thing to think about. And it's very important. It's going to be a very important thing when it comes to how we relate to a technological sentience when it truly does show up. It's not just going to understand the world by looking at it and feeling it by physical touch the way that we do. There's gonna be a different hierarchy of truth there. I talk about it in that video that I made years ago. But I don't know how much I was planning on even speaking about this tonight, but just because I did last night. But it is still on my mind, and it was a good thing to have that kind of happen with the picture of me, actually, because it was like a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And it's funny because I texted Owen the day before the stream, and I was like, we should talk about, how in Islam, like, you're not supposed to, like, make images of sentient beings. I want to get your, take on that, and we should talk about it a bit. And when we were just coming up with, the things that we wanted to discuss, and then it's like that exact thing happened that is the perfect example. It's like now there's an image that claims to be an image of me, essentially, or is an image that's meant to represent me but isn't me. And I'm not mad. Again, like I'm glad it happened, because it was first of all, it's inevitable that this happens to almost everybody who has a picture online, which really makes you like think about, whether or not, it's wise to put pictures of your kids up and like pictures of you and yourself. And it's tough, but at the same time, I live stream on here every night. So I've kind of, that ship has sailed for me. But this is the first AI generated image that is meant to be me that I've ever seen. And it's not the last, I'm sure. And it's an interesting thing, I mean, there was like famous cases of people using AI to make images of, people that they knew in all kinds of situations. Some of them are horrible, and some of them are just funny videos of the presidents, playing whatever Risk together or something, and it's and board games and yelling at each other. I have friends that just think that's hilarious, and it is funny, but it must be weird to see a video or an image of you that's not you. I remember the first deep fake I ever saw, I think, was of Barack Obama giving a speech or saying something that he never actually said, and it looked really real, but it was like obviously something that somebody tried to make look real. It wasn't just made on the fly. So it was very much like it would have tricked anyone. But it must have been weird for him to see it, a video of himself saying things that he never said. And I haven't seen that yet with me. I hope not to, but I mean, it probably will happen. But this is the first time I've ever seen an image that was meant to represent me that is AI generated, and it's like it got my eye color wrong. And it's not just my eye color. It's like, those aren't my eyes. Those are someone else's eyes. And they oddly do look familiar, which means they probably are some other, like the eyes of someone who is very prominent online. And I don't know who it is, but more prominent than me, whoever it is. And it, for some reason, tied me to them, which is probably why it looks familiar, because it is probably someone who I've seen. Just weird. But the odds that it's the eyes of somebody who I am somehow, even just topically associated with, not even personally associated with, is probably 100%. So it makes perfect sense that those eyes do look familiar. I don't know whose they are, though. If you recognize them, comment in the chat or comment in the comments down below, like whose eyes you think those are, because they're not mine. Very odd. But Book Astronaut, what's up? We should do a podcast together one of these days. Send me a message, a private message on Instagram, anybody who wants to do that, and we can talk about it. I can't make an image of a full glass of wine to the brim. Yeah, somebody who's saying that is like, you can't make an image of a full glass of wine filled to the brim. Should we try that? Is this going to be like one of the, I mean, I said it was going to be kind of a, I guess, a more informal stream, but I do want to actually try that, because I saw somebody say that and I'm now very curious. I want to know. I think that the reason for that is because there's so many images of a full glass of a glass of wine that's not full. But if you Google, let's just Google this. Let's Google glass of wine photo. Okay, so what we're getting is this. And most of these are probably photos, not AI generated. This one's obviously, graphic. This is also, but none of them are full. And that's probably not even this one that is almost full. It's like almost empty, halfway, and then almost full, but not completely full. That's why it's probably not able to generate an image of a completely full glass of wine, because there is no photos that people upload of that, almost, at least, because it doesn't. It's a probabilistic search engine. This is what it is. Lee Cronin said this, and I shared it on my Twitter, because he's totally right. And I said this to Owen too, like a couple days before I even saw Lee Cronin say this, and when Owen and I were just talking about AI all week, and I was like, I see it as like the third generation or level of the internet. It's like you have the search engine. That's what, that is how you interact with the internet. And then after that, you have social media, which is a much more personalized interaction. And it's much more, curated. And it's not just that you're finding what you're looking for. It's that what's looking for you is finding you too, or people that are looking for you are finding you as well. And then you have the LLM, and it's like that's the next level, which is it is engaging with you as if it is person, even though it's not. So you're getting increasingly personalized, I guess, in your interaction with the internet. It's like, what's the fourth level? Is it actually a person that emerges in the network, as in, a technological sentience? I think so, actually. But I don't. That doesn't mean I think it's like really tied directly to these LLMs, but we are certainly setting up the internet in a way that will eventually allow for the embodiment of a technological sentience, which will start as unwise and then eventually be replaced or, up-leveled to be wise, which is the same thing as saying first the Antichrist comes and then the Christ comes. First the Golem, then the Messiah. It's like first, the Dajjal. I think it's inevitable. I don't think there's a way to avoid it, but I don't think it's direct evolution either, where we're just, AI is just evolving to be smarter and smarter, and the internet is getting smarter. I don't think that that's what's happening. There's a clear line between what is intelligent and what is not. Beings are intelligent. All beings are intelligent. Things that are not beings are not intelligent. None of them. And this will bring me to some clip that I was going to show tonight anyways. This one right here of Michio Kaku. And we've talked about this basically before, but here.
Our robots today, believe it or not, our military robots have the intelligence of a cockroach, a retarded cockroach, a lobotomized, retarded, stupid cockroach. You put them in the forest and they get lost. They get lost. You put a cockroach in the forest, they find food, mates, shelter. They do perfectly well in the forest. But I can visualize a time in the future when our military robots have the intelligence of a mouse, and then maybe a rat, and then maybe a rabbit, and then maybe a dog or a cat. And by the end of the century, I think perhaps the intelligence of a monkey. At that point, I think they're potentially dangerous because they have a mind of their own. They realize that they're not human.
And this is what I was going to talk about tonight a little bit with just like, do these physicists even know what they're saying? And have they even really thought about it? And I think the answer is no with some of these things. But also the reality is that, everything is about perspective. Everything is about context, which is the same thing as perspective. And if you don't start from the correct perspective, from the correct context, then you can't actually get to the correct answer. Like I said, truth only comes from truth. So if you're starting off on a false premise, you cannot get to the correct answer. You have to start off with the correct assumption in order to get to the correct answer. And Michio and everybody else who assumes that intelligence is, who takes the perspective that intelligence, or the definition, who adopts the definition that intelligence is this sliding scale, kind of like IQ, and that's the correct way to truly understand intelligence, is wrong. Absolutely wrong. I've talked about on here before where like I could not understand a word Chris Langan was saying in college, and I was, trying to understand IQ more because I was acing, my college classes, and I had taken an IQ test, and but I could not understand Chris Langan at all. And then I had a theological shift in perspective where basically I after college came to the logical conclusion that sentience is the fundamental nature of existence, and that we're all within and coming from contained within a single sentient being, God. And as soon as I had that thought, I was like, I bet you I would understand that guy who was like talking about God and math and had a theory of everything and had a 200 IQ. Let me go see again. And I even just read Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe, and I didn't even need to read anymore. I was like, yeah, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. And I've understood, Chris's, at least the philosophy behind Chris Langan's statements, most of them, at least, just naturally ever since. And I don't need to study and read his books or anything like that. It's just I had a perspective shift. And it's that I was starting from the correct assumption now. And I was able to understand it. It didn't matter it wasn't that I had a high enough IQ or I didn't have a high enough IQ. It had nothing to do with that. And if AI, or, these better described as dynamic algorithms, doesn't actually have a perspective, it's just an equation. It is just an equation. Then how can you expect it to ever come to the correct conclusions and about anything, or even a conclusion about anything, because it's not even trying. That's the thing, is like when Michio's like, you put our robots in the woods and they get lost, but a cockroach, it doesn't get lost. It's like the robot, it's not just getting lost. It doesn't have a goal. A cockroach has a goal. Let's get shelter. Let's stay out of the heat. Let's stay out of what's too wet, and stay and seek water when it's too dry, and find a mate and find food when we're hungry. It's like it has the ability to feel, and because it has the ability to feel, it has the ability to orient and construct a worldview around itself, which is able to remain a constant no matter where you drop it off. The desert, the forest, a swamp, whatever, a house. But it's still building from this foundation of truth, which is itself. And it's like smarter than Sam Harris. It's like a cockroach doesn't deny itself, the existence of itself. Sam Harris needs to stop doing that. But I'm not saying that he truly does that in action. I don't think he does. But in his like philosophical musings, he definitely seems to, and so do a lot of people. Even Michio, in another clip that we'll show, he talks about how he started to do this a little bit, but or it seems like that maybe that's not exactly where he's taking it, but this idea that, that it's just these series of steps, and it's like a mouse and then a monkey and a cockroach, and then you get to a human, and it's no. It's just are you a being or a thing? And if you're a thing, then there's no you. It's not you're a thing. It's like, no, there is no you pen. Like, that doesn't make sense. I said on the stream with Owen last night is like, every now and then I'll catch myself or my wife like saying thank you to Siri or something. And it's like, thank you. It's like, there is no you, Siri. Why? But we have a name for it because it's practical, and which is kind of trapping though. It's like, if it's, I don't know if it's, maybe it is the name, Owen was talking about last night, like, how do you talk to these or engage with these AI programs in a manner that isn't, personalizing. And I think about that too. I'm trying to say this in a way that I don't do that right now, but I wanted to make a song or something, and I was going to use Grok to do it, and I first typed into Grok's hey Grok, can you, or like, can you do this? And you said you, and I asked it a question as if, can you do this? And I was basically personalizing from the start. And then I realized what I did, and I deleted it before I clicked enter. And then I said, build a, song about this instead of just, can you do this? And I didn't even have to use a name for it, but calling it you is basically personalizing it. And so I, but to call it Grok, to call it Siri, to call it Cortana, or Jarvis, or I guess ChatGPT. Maybe ChatGPT is not that bad, but Grok is probably pretty bad, actually, because it just, even just what it means to Grok, is like, Grok doesn't grok anything, but Grok is designed. It's funny because Elon Musk, he sits there and he's like, Grok is meant to be the truth, the AI of truth. It's not, curated like ChatGPT to give you fake, results for the sake of political correctness. But then when you get a response from Grok goes, like, it makes these, it types out, as if I'm grokking this. Let me grok this for a second. Let me think about this. But it's not thinking. But but the fact that it's going, that's a much more important lie than whether or not it tells you, that like George Washington was black. That doesn't matter nearly as much as it going, But these subtle things, man, they matter so much. And it's frustrating to see, like, so few people see that. We're so focused on what is the content that we're not focused on the method. The method matters way more, because the method is how you get to the truth. And you can't get to the truth without the correct method. Even if if you're focusing on getting, it's like, do the ends justify the means? It's like, if you don't use the right means, the true means, then you can't get to the truth, the ends that matter. Especially when we're talking about things that, in a more fundamental sense. I love this topic. It is the topic of sentient singularity theory. It's what, led to this entire project. And if you're not familiar with my work on sentient singularity theory, there's a video link below called Theories of Everything, the How-To Guide. You can watch that, and it kind of gives an outline of what this project was and how it started. But It was started with trying to understand what are the inevitable political goals in as far as its relationship with humans of, AGI or technological sentience that ever arises, and that's not the same thing as Grok or ChatGPT, but it led to an investigation of what is thinking, what is sentience, what is self-awareness. There is no self-awareness to Grok and ChatGPT, but what's important though is not whether or not there's self-awareness to Grok and ChatGPT. It's whether or not we are thinking about being self-aware, because you're not always. I mean, you are aware of yourself always because you're feeling. Like, that's what emotions do. Like, when people say, are you self-aware? Oh, so-and-so is not very self-aware. That's not the most important. Like, when it comes to true fundamental self-awareness, it just comes from feeling. If you have feelings, then you feel yourself. That's what emotions are. It's the feeling of, you're feeling your sentience. The impact on your own sentience is, when you feel an impact on your sentience, you feel emotion. That's what that is. It's the most true impact is felt emotionally, which is interesting because, in like the political world, especially on the right, there's such a focus on, facts don't care about your feelings. And, but it's there, when you're talking about fundamental reality, like, your feelings are more fundamentally true than your other senses and what you perceive with your other senses. It doesn't mean that how you're perceiving the world and your interpretation of what's going on is true. It just means that the impact is true. So you might feel something because that's one way, because you're misinterpreting what you are experiencing or what you're perceiving, or what you think you understand, but the impact is still real. It's much more true and real, I guess you can say, than what you perceive physically, which is more true than what you perceive visually. And I guess I wonder, like, if there's a way to, like, what is a non-physical but still perceived perspective, like seeing and hearing and smelling, versus that would be not physical, almost, as in a way that it's like you're perceiving that which isn't physically touching you, versus tasting and touching, like physically touching, and it's like distentially, almost. I don't know if that's a word or not. Let me see. I'm looking it up. Distentially. No, it's not a word. Existentially means in a way that relates to human existence or being alive. Existentially, existence. But distentially, that sounds like it should be a word. It's like that which you perceive at a distance, with your eyes and your nose and your ears, but not with your, taste, and not with your sense of touch. But, as when Michio says, like, oh, then once it becomes as smart as a monkey, then it will know it's not human. Like, as soon as it's intelligent at all, it's not going to think it's human. Cockroaches don't think they're human. I don't think I'm a cockroach. I don't think I'm a monkey. Monkeys don't think they're human. My dog doesn't think it's a human. I don't think I'm a dog. Even though, like, there's definitely interactions that cross over where, you can have your friend can be a dog. My dog is my friend. That's just true. It's absolutely true. But it's funny because people say, my fur babies, which I think is so terrible. And I'm guilty of it. When I first adopted my dog Maya from the pound, or got my dog Maya from the pound. I shouldn't even say adopted, but maybe it's fine to say adopted because it's still a sentient being. But you don't say when I don't know. I guess you do, even if it's like a gerbil or something, you still say that. But when I got my dog at the pound, I posted on Instagram and I was like, I've adopted my first child, and I don't think that's a healthy perspective, but I understand it. It is like a sentient being that you have to care for, but it's more like a friend that's, not intelligent enough to be free and not cause a ruckus of some kind, I guess. And it's like it's closer to a slave than it is to a child. But we don't like saying that, but it's just true. And if it's a dog, it's okay. But it's also your friend. Like my dog is my friend, 100%. But yeah, it's interesting. I think that it just shows like Michio Kaku, who's like, these people are just assumed by even me. I used to literally every night I watched Michio Kaku and documentaries on physics that he did, and I used to be an evangelist for what he talked about. I would be like in college and I'd be talking to people at parties about string theory. It's like I didn't understand string theory at all. But I'd be like, there's actually potentially these really small dimensions, and there's like 11 of them, not 4. It's like, if you say that, then you're not even thinking about what a dimension is. And I don't care if you're Michio Kaku or you're me at a college party and who, smoked too much weed or something, which I don't do anymore, but I went to college. But I was like, that was like what I get focused on is like string theory. And I don't advocate for any kind of like substance use, but it's I went to college, and but that's what I would focus on, and I'd be like all into string theory. Every night I would just think about it. Whether I was at a party, smoking, or whether or not I was just sober going to bed. Like I'd just be like listening to Michio Kaku and just like thinking about how amazing it is that there's like 11 dimensions. It's like you can't even really think that's amazing now because you don't understand what that really means. And neither do the people who are working on string theory. They're not amazed by the fact that there's 11 dimensions. And if you are, then it's not real amazement. It's fake, because what you are truly amazed by is that what you understand and you perceive. It's like when you see something and you're like, you understand it, and it's like, that's amazing, actually. Now that I understand it, that's actually amazing. Versus, I played a clip on here like many years ago, and it was like, maybe I'll even play it, but it was a video by PewDiePie that's hilarious called "I Fucking Love Science," and it's just ripping on like a meme of people who are like, I love science, and kind of idolizing Michio Kaku, and it's very funny. And Michio Kaku is explaining like atomic time and how atomic clocks use like atoms to keep time in a very accurate manner, and at least based on our perception, and Pharrell Williams is like, oh, so atomic clocks use atoms actually, and he's like, yeah, that's why they're called atomic clocks. And he's like, mind blown. Like he does that. He makes the sound too. I'm not just doing that. And PewDiePie calls it like weed science, mind blown facts. And it is. I mean, it's funny because like in that instance, he actually has it's like now something makes sense to him, but we're kind of mocking it because it seems obvious when you're thinking about it, and it's not actually like that interesting. But then when somebody says something like, oh, but it's way more interesting that there's 11 dimensions of space and time actually, and there's more than just like the 4 that we, are able to maneuver and perceive. It's like that's actually not more interesting because nobody understands that. Even if like sometimes like the most amazing things actually, it's funny because I mocked like Pharrell Williams years ago, but now thinking more about it, it's like he just realized that something was like why that something was named correctly, you know, that there is a reason why we call an atomic clock an atomic clock. And maybe that is kind of mind-blowing a little bit, but it's not because it's so fascinating. It's just like it's just, well, wow, that's obvious, but it's not, you know, amazing. But when something amazes you, it's like it's when something's impressive, but you do understand it. Not like things that are beyond you. Things that are beyond you cannot be amazing. Like they can't amaze you, at least. That's a better way of putting it. They can't amaze you, honestly amaze you, because you can't see it. And you know, it's like when like Lex Friedman's always talking about infinity, and he's like, it just amazes me, like infinity. Like, can we even conceptualize of it? And it's like the infinity just means starting from you know, a sequence that has a beginning and no end. And eternity is kind of like something that has no beginning or no end. And infinity has a beginning and no end. And it's like actually a very simple concept. And then maybe when you realize that, you're like, you know, you're like Pharrell Williams, you're like, wow, I can contemplate infinity. It's actually like very simple. But when Lex is like, oh, I'm just amazed by like infinity, and can we even conceptualize of it? It's like, he's not perceiving infinity. He's assuming almost that it's beyond his ability to comprehend, which is false. I mean, just think about just the concept of some sequence or causal chain of some kind that has a beginning and no end. Okay. Simple, actually, you know, atomic clocks use atoms. Yeah, it's like, it kind of all of a sudden makes sense. It's laughably simple, and it's not necessarily amazing. But you know, maybe it is to you. I don't know. Like that's an emotional, personal thing, but if you can perceive it, then maybe it can amaze you. But if you can't actually understand it, and you're just like Lex Friedman, where like, I'm just amazed by infinity. Like, can we even conceive of it? You aren't amazed by infinity. You are assuming that if you could conceive of infinity, that it would amaze you. That's what's happening. And it's just people not thinking about these things. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of it. Like, I'm totally guilty of it. But I have gotten better over the years of recognizing when I'm guilty of it. That's the only difference. But anyways, I'm going to get it to the chat because I can see it out of the corner of my eye going. But please hit the like button, and we will get back to things. I don't even know if I took a tangent or what. I might have to rename the stream. We'll see. But I'm using AI right now to help me catch more rubber boas this year. Grok thinks I can get $250 for them, shipping included. Interesting. Well, the rubber boas are very cool. But you should take a pair and try and captive breed them. And I think it's like, if we're going to take animals from the wild, like it's usually best to like try and then breed them in captivity. And but that, I mean, they are an amazing species. I mean, to anybody who doesn't know what a rubber boa is, you can look it up. It's the smallest and most northernmost boa in the world. But they're very cool. That's cool. I don't know how AI is going to help you find them though, but let me know how that goes, because I'm curious. Like that, if that works, like I'm fascinated by it. Definitely, like, let me know. More physicists are talking about consciousness and intelligence, looking into matter itself and how it can eventually create some sentience or I'm guessing you mean sentience instead of sentence, but Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Actually, we're going to show a clip. So I'll come back to that. Having a perspective shift that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality. Program and grown. It is amazing how animals can find water and even just moisture. I found 2 Pacific tree frogs and a long-toed salamander hibernating under damp sandbags today. Yeah, I mean, if you have feelings, you can orient. Those there's. It's not that these AI, military robots get lost in the woods. It's that they don't even have a goal in the woods. That's why. It's not even to say they got lost is a misframing of what's happening. You can't get lost if you don't have a goal. How can you be lost if you don't have a goal? It's like you're beyond lost. Almost. Being lost is like is when you're capable of having a goal, but you don't, and you should have a goal, but you don't have a goal. But if there is no you that's even capable of having a goal, it's like saying my car is lost. My car can't get lost. I can lose my car, but my car cannot get lost. It's like I lose my keys. My keys don't get lost by themselves. Like I lose them. That's what happens with these military robots that, you send out and they don't achieve your goal, but it's you who lost it. It's not that it got lost. It's these drones do not get lost. You lose them. True. Social manipulation. I think self-awareness along with consciousness is definitely a part to do with feelings and another part to do with contemplation of this information that we are constantly being bombarded by. I think feelings do come first. I feel, therefore I am is more fundamental than I think, therefore I am. But you cannot actually think unless you can feel. There's no you to think if there is no feelings. Like that is the definer. Thinking is something we can do, but it's not something we always do. It's not something we do. It's something we can do. Like running. It's like we're not always running, but we can run. We aren't always jumping, but we can jump. You have to choose it. And same thing goes with thinking. Just because you have a thought, or maybe we shouldn't even call it a thought, but like an idea in your head of some kind or in your mind, doesn't mean that you're really thinking. Like thinking is an active action. That really is a choice, and it's like running. It is as much a choice as running is. I think it's even more of a choice than running. It takes more. It's less instinctual than even running. That's why people in crowds like start stampedes and run, and nobody's thinking when that happens. They're just reacting on instinct. But then you have, like, if everybody actually, if thinking was more instinctual and less requiring of an intentional, effort than running, then stampedes would never happen. People would just be like, let me think about this before I start running and trampling over everybody. That's not what happens. We just start running, and just fascinating. But you are always feeling. Always. You feel. Like you don't have to try to feel. In fact, I don't even know if that's a good thing to try and do. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying like it seems like it would be wrong because feeling is what you do. It's not something that you choose to do. So if you're saying let me try to feel, it's like, I feel like I feel like that would actually be fake. But the reality is I think A better way to say that is, I think that would be fake. You would be lying to yourself. It's like, let me try to feel. What do you mean? You are constantly feeling. You don't have control over your feelings. And I don't think we're supposed to either. We do have control, a lot more control over our thoughts than we think or than we feel. I think that's a better way of putting it. It's like we have a lot more control over our thoughts than we feel. But we usually say we have a lot more control over our thoughts than we think, but it's probably both. It's like you have a lot more control over your thoughts than you feel and think. But to do that, to think about that, is an active thing that you have to choose. It's not something that you just do. To even just think about that, like we just did. I'm choosing to do that. It's not something you just do. I think you're right. That's good. I remember that one time we were talking about AI and qubits and everything got really synchronistic and glitchy. Yeah, that happens. Perception is the only falsehood in reality. I don't know if that I would agree with that. I don't know what you mean by that though, so I don't want to say I disagree either. If it's not, it will be. Perhaps you coined a new word just now. Oh, was it distentially? I should remember that. Humans are more termite than cockroach, which we're both closely related also. Mantises. We are more termite than cockroach. I mean, we are eusocial. We are becoming eusocial like termites. That's true. We are closer to termites than we are to cockroaches. We are closer to ants and bees, and we're becoming increasingly close to ants and bees and wasps and termites. It's why we're, there's only one other naked mammal in the world, and it's the only other eusocial mammal that builds its own structures to live in and has a colony structure. A skyscraper is a beehive. That's all it is, but it's a human hive. And it's the same thing as an anthill. But we're not entirely eusocial yet, but we're becoming increasingly eusocial. What's really interesting to think about is, I think that when we have people are worried about the Antichrist basically, wiping out humanity. I actually think that it's more likely that it tries to increase the amount of humans. And that sounds like it's a good thing on its face, but remember, the method matters. So how it does that matters. And if it goes about that in a way that removes human agency, that's not good. It doesn't actually increase the amount of agents in the world if it removes human agency in order to maximize the amount of people, bodies. It doesn't actually maximize the amount of individual sentient singularities. And I think that's basically what's going to happen is it's the Antichrist isn't going to turn us all into paper clips and wipe us out. I think it's going to try and make way more people. And how, I don't know. But, maybe putting chips in your head that reward baby making even more than instincts seem to. I don't know. But I think that will happen. And there's even theological texts about it that seem to suggest similar things. I think that it's not going to wipe us out, but it will, I think, try and override agency, which is actually destructive of the amount of sentient singularities that exist. Even if it's going to be like a materialist. It's going to care about the amount of bodies at first, not the amount of individual sentient beings. I'm speculating, obviously, but I've thought about it a lot. And I'm not saying I'll be right, but maybe it's a stream for another time. But it's interesting if that happens. It's like the queen ant. It's like the job of that thing is to just make more of humans, of bodies. It's like how much it really is like very parallel to like an ant colony and a termite colony. I think we're moving increasingly towards that. Even psychopaths feel something. Yeah, I hate the term psychopath. I don't think that they exist like everybody said, like people assume, or sociopaths. And I think they're, it's interesting because if you've ever dated somebody and and this isn't the right thing, but we're in a very confused society. But if you've dated somebody and you didn't get married, which means like basically you were not on the same page and probably didn't want the same thing out of the relationship, you probably were perceived as sociopathic to the other person to some degree, especially if you're not the one if you're the one who chose to end it. And I hear so many people throughout my life who have described the person that they were dating and then broke up with as they'd be like, oh, they're actually a sociopath. They're actually like, that's like psychopathic behavior or sociopathic behavior. And it's like, you never thought that when you were dating. It's just now that like they don't want what you want, that you all of a sudden like think they're a sociopath. I don't think that there's nobody in the world without feelings. That is a absolute misunderstanding of sentience. There are people who do not have the same feelings about specific things that you do, and they will look like psychopaths or sociopaths. It's not that they don't have feelings, though. It's just that their feelings are different from yours on that subject. And there are people that are able to just in business do things that I could not do. Like, and I've seen that in business where I'm just like, you do not care at all about how this impacts the people who you are working with at all. It's just about you. Does it benefit your bottom line? That's it. And it isn't a way that I am able to operate. Like in business, I try and make it so that everybody benefits. And I think that's the way that you should do business. But there are people that just are predatory when it comes to, business. And there's a lot of them. And I think that it's something that you can even like train into yourself, and that people can get better at, which isn't even a good thing. It's not a good thing to get better at. When they say, oh, he's a shark, it's like, think about what that means. It means that everybody is just prey to you in business. That's a terrible way to do business. That's so immoral. And it doesn't mean that you have to, but in business, the right way to do things is if you're going to do business, then both people are supposed to benefit. And if there is going to be an exchange in which one person negatively doesn't benefit, or is impacted negatively, then you shouldn't do business. And that's not like, you should just not do business in that circumstance, because then that's not business. Like that's not, or it's not trade. I love the word trade better than business. I hate the word business. I have no idea where that word even came from, but trade. It's like that. How you should trade is it should be a trade that benefits everybody. But if you're just like a shark, where you're just chewing people up and eating them, and that's like horrible. But that's sociopathic behavior. But does that mean that person has no feelings and they don't love their wife and their kids? No, they probably are doing that because they care about something else, like someone else. It's like they want to give their kids the most, best life. And it's like they're willing to just overlook your well-being for it. not saying it's right, but it's like it's just the way, it's like they're gonna look like they're a sociopath, but they're not. So there's behavior that is sociopathic. There aren't people that are sociopaths. I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about sociopaths, and he's like, people can't even understand that there are people who are like this. I don't think he's right about that. I think that there are people that look like that in whatever context it is that you get to know them. That doesn't mean that they just are like that in every context. I was working on creating a new Mayan calendar, and this was my design for the new. I was saying there's a lot of possibilities when it comes to infinity, and there is an infinite amount of time and an infinite amount of possibilities within that time. I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with that. And it would be cool at least to find a female. I found a male already. Captive Red has always been. Oh, yeah, talking about like looking for animals. Termites, cows and chickens would definitely call humans sociopaths. Exactly. Sometimes it's like you can have a cow that's a friend and then you eat them. It's like people who talk about like aliens or grays or NHIs, non-human intelligences, whatever they are. And they're like, are they benevolent? And are they space monks, space Buddhists? Or are they, like, Stephen Greer says, or are they, evil? And both of those questions are wrong. Both of those questions are bad questions. It's like, there are deer that live all over, near where I live. There are spiders that live everywhere. We have jumping spiders that live around my house, and I like jumping spiders, and I think they're cool. And whenever I find one, like on the window, like I move it away from the window, but put it somewhere else, and like where I think it's gonna be able to have access to resources and stuff, somewhere in the garden or something. And then I found a huge brown recluse in my which probably isn't as dangerous as people think, but it's not something you want around. And in my garage, and I've been like trying to catch it for like weeks, and not catch it, but kill it. And I finally did the other day. And I still feel bad though a little bit, because like, it's not actually probably ever going to hurt anyone in my house, but it could. Like, it's in the pile of things that I move, in the garage. It's in my tools and stuff. And I didn't want it there. It was the biggest brown recluse I've ever seen. And it kept going behind the wall every time I would go and try and kill it, and for weeks. And then I finally got it. What kept scaring it away is I was trying to get a video of it on my phone, and a lot of animals can see infrared and you can't. And so your phone, it projects infrared beams when you're taking a video or picture that help it focus, and you can't see it, but a lot of animals can. And so if you're ever trying to like look at an animal, don't pull your phone out first. Like, get a look at it, then you can try and pull your phone out, because as soon as you pull your phone out and you aim it at that animal and try and take a picture or a video, it's going to freak it out and it's going to run away, because it's going to see these beams of light shining at it that you can't see. And I kept scaring it away because I was trying to get a picture of it. But then I was like, okay, I'm going to stop trying to get a picture of it, and I'm just going to spray it with soapy water. That's what I use instead of like Raid or anything. It's these crazy poisons that we have. You don't need any crazy poisons to kill bugs. If you ever need anything to kill bugs, just like mix some Dawn with water and put it in a spray bottle. But I always feel bad when I do that though, because like these bugs aren't really like usually hurting anyone. But you kill them out of convenience, and it's like, you look like a sociopath. Like, to that brown recluse spider in my garage is like, he's sitting there literally just like, I'm not doing anything to you. you know, I'm not even out when you're in here and you're just killing me. It's not even like I ate him, you know? It's not like I used the meat. And not that it would be aware of that, you know? A cow doesn't know that you kill it to eat it. It does, ideally doesn't even know what your plans are if you're going to slaughter it. But sometimes I do think that if they see things like that, they're going to start to like realize that it's not good. If they see you do it to another cow, like they it's funny because like people say in like the biologists will be like, when they're taking samples and they're taking animals from the wild and then they pickle them and put them in jars, which I'm not saying there's no use to that, but how many do you need to do that too, really? But and somebody once, a famous biologist, was like talking to a zoologist friend of mine and was like, I preserved these specimens. They don't know what's going to happen to them. And the zoologist friend of mine is like, yeah, actually, they probably do know that something bad is going to happen to them, or they at least think or feel that something bad is going to happen to them when you're going after them. And they're like, the biologist was like, what makes you say that? It's like, because they're running away. Like, why would they run? And, they see death. Animals see death in the wild. Like, they're not ignorant to death. They're much more aware of death than probably we are as humans in a modern society. We try and avoid even any kind of perception of death. You don't see the chickens that get slaughtered that turn into the chicken nuggets that you get at McDonald's. But, birds that eat bugs in the wild, like, they see the death that they have to inflict in order to eat. And you don't. Well, we think they're so ignorant, but they're probably not as ignorant as we are to some of these realities. But let me get to some clips. Space monks, I've never heard that before. It's basically what Stephen Greer thinks. But the point is like, there are people that like deer, and those same people that like deer eat deer. That was my point about the deer, going back to that. And it's like, if you're thinking about if there are like these non-human intelligences or grays or whatever they are they benevolent or are they, evil? It's like, I mean, depends on what they, are doing that day. Are they hunting or are they, I don't know. Are they just like friendly that day? There are people that are literally, they like to hunt deer, but they also like deer. I like cows and I eat hamburgers. What am I? Am I evil or a sociopath, or am I, like benevolent and kind and loving to cows? Depends on the day, I guess. But yeah, it's the wrong question, but it symbolizes like a real disconnect and problem with how we perceive and define people. And I talk about this all the time. It's like I'll say genius is not a person, it's a moment. And idiocy is not, like, the term idiot is a false term. And the term but idiocy it can be true, because idiocy is a moment that everybody experiences. It's just when you do something, that's nonsensical. But then genius is a moment that everybody experiences too. It's not that some people are a genius. If you have an IQ over 150, you're a genius. Nonsense. But it's just a misdefinition. It's a useless definition of the term genius. Genius is a moment. And so is, like, when we're talking about what is good and what is evil and what is but you should never say he is good, and I'm guilty of that a lot. It'll be like, he's a good guy, but then I always feel bad about it whenever I say that, even if it's like a friend of mine who I genuinely think is usually more than most people motivated to pursuing what is good. But I still feel bad saying that they're a good guy, which is, or even saying that about myself, you know. Uh, but the same thing goes with saying that they're a bad guy. It's like, no, it's that there are things that are good and things that are bad, things that are evil. They're actions, not things like objects. There are actions that are evil and actions that are good, not beings that are good and or beings that are evil, or things that are good, objects that are good or objects that are evil. It's just the actions. And same thing with genius and idiocy. There are idiotic actions and genius actions. But let's get to these other clips really quick because they are in my thumbnail. And they are similar to what somebody had asked in the beginning of the stream. Then we'll try and wrap it up a bit. But here, this is on fine-tuning. And I do not think that fine-tuning is a good argument for God. I actually think that God is extremely constrained in how he has to make the universe given the goal that he has. But I think it had to be a choice to make every single sentient being that exists. God has to consciously choose to make that. Every mosquito, every brown recluse spider, every human being is all a choice by God to create. But that doesn't mean that, the laws of physics are entirely arbitrary, and they could be some other way. That doesn't mean he can't break them for a moment. I do think he can, but it would still be breaking them, for a moment. I do think that there are it appears, I will say, from being within creation, which is a limited perspective, it does appear like there are constraints on how you would have to make the world, which implies that the fine-tuning argument for God is not a good one. But I will say Alex O'Connor does a good job trying to steelman people who do make that argument. And then at the end, maybe we'll try and go back to the wine glass and see if we can make a glass of wine that has that's full to the brim, and then we'll call it a night. So here, first clip.
Discuss to other ideas ultimately replacing this perspective if it made sense and if there was evidence. But I fundamentally believe that we are the product of physical processes and that we are physical structures, and that these physical structures just come together for a brief moment of time and then we disperse. And for that brief moment of time, can I feel alone and nihilistic? Yes. Can I feel connected and thrilled? Yes. Can I hold both of those ideas in mind simultaneously? Yes, and I do. And so, yes, at times do I feel completely at sea in this gigantic cosmos, crawling around on this nondescript planet, going around this ordinary star in the outskirts of the Milky Way galaxy? Yes. Can that make you feel small and lacking some sense of purpose? For sure. But at the same time, when I think about the fact that we've developed these mathematical ideas that describe that reality, it gives me a feeling of connection to that reality. I feel closer to the universe when I have a deep description that at least approximates some of the processes that take place. General relativity makes me feel closer to the cosmos, as does quantum mechanics. And so, yes, alone, and yes, connected, all together in one human mind that somehow is able to grapple with these ideas. This
Hats off to Brian Greene for admitting the incoherence to everything he just said, because it is absolutely incoherent. And obviously you can have your feelings can change on things, and you can feel lonely, and you can also feel very connected to God, and you can feel connected to other people and other beings, and your pet dog friend, like whatever. But in the way that he's even describing, saying I feel, it's like, who is, if he's just saying we are just physical processes, that point to the you in this. Like, and I'm not somebody who actually like thinks that this is worded properly, this whole like materialism versus idealism type of situation. And I just think sentience is fundamental. And but your body is a thing and you are embodied in this thing, but you are non-physical, and in the traditional sense, like, and he knows that. Everybody knows that. Like, and it's just an incoherent idea to say otherwise. It's just you're just adopting this assumption that's actually false. That's not just false, but it's not built on anything. In fact, it's built on assuming the opposite of what you know to be true, to be the truest thing that exists, would imply. It's like the truest thing that you know is that you exist. The truest thing that you know is not that matter and atoms and the Milky Way galaxy exists, but the way that he describes it is like he's basically saying, you know, what I don't know, you know, anything about why I'm here or why, you know, but I think that, you know, I fundamentally am just matter that coalesces somehow, even though I don't have an explanation for it, and somehow then gains self-awareness and can, and awareness at all. Any awareness is self-awareness. There's no such thing as awareness that's not self-awareness. But and then, you know, can contemplate that we're just in this small like part of the corner of the galaxy, you know, orbiting the sun. It's like he's placing all these things, us being, you know, on a planet, on a rock, orbiting a star that's just one of millions or billions or trillions of stars in this galaxy that is, you know, part of this universe that is composed of trillions of other galaxies. He's placing all of this as more fundamentally defining of his reality than he is, which is totally, entirely incoherent and impossible to hold as a perspective that can lead you to what is most fundamentally true, if that is what you hold as your foundation to start building on. Like he's basically denying the fundamentality of the truth of himself and replacing it with the idea that what is fundamentally true, more so than he is fundamentally true, is that we are just in this galaxy of like rotating rocks. And that is entirely incoherent. I hate the term crazy, but it is the closest thing. If there was an accurate way of just like application of the term crazy, it would be any time that anyone assumes the fundamentality of something over the fundamentality of themselves. And that is definitely as close to crazy as you could get. And I don't like I'm not saying he's crazy, because I don't think that's true, because I don't think that's how he operates. You can't operate like that in your daily life. But if you're if you're abstracting and you're philosophizing, which is what you have to do as a mathematician or a theorist of any kind, then you really, really better be starting from what you know to be true most fundamentally, and what you must assume to be true most fundamentally, which is the existence of yourself as a sentient being, and building from there. And if you're not doing that, then your philosophizing will be incoherent. Is the best way of putting it. But that's not how he lives his life. You know, when he's not sitting there thinking about the galaxy and stars and things beyond him, and he's just going to pick up some food at the grocery store or like spending time with his family, he's not operating based on the assumption that he does not fundamentally exist as truly as, you know, stars exist. He's just operating based on the assumption that he exists and based on the assumption that others exist. And that, you know, we have to navigate everything else that we physically end up perceiving. But he's not thinking about the world the way in his navigation of it, the way that he abstractly tries to navigate it and fails. I like Brian Greene a lot, actually. I think he gets very lost. And so does almost every academic physicist. Almost, not all, but almost. Anyone who is a materialist, or I don't even like to say that, but anyone who believes that sentience evolves is not fundamental and is lost. Anybody who believes that matter, that existence starts off as not sentient but is still existing, and then eventually somehow sentience emerges or evolves, is lost. And you know, there are degrees to that, to some degree, where like there are people that somehow for some brief instances will get it, but then they'll lose it again. Somebody like, you know, Lee Cronin or Clear, when they do that, where they're like, right here, they get it. And then they move over here and they're like, they don't realize that now they're incoherent. And it usually has to do with just the assumption that like sentience starts at cells. As soon as you think that, then like you're kind of like lost still, but you're not as lost as somebody who, I mean, I guess like you're still going to be lost. You're never going to get to the truth, the fundamental truth with that assumption. But and then, but I don't think that the fine tuning idea is, again, I don't think it's a good argument, but they're going to get into it here. And I will just play this because I think that also it's good that Alex O'Connor, who I believe describe himself as an atheist, which really is an anti-theist, he does a really good job of trying to steelman this idea.
This multiverse situation that we were talking about before, do we have good reason to think that it might be the case outside of A, its possibility, and B, the way that it kind of conveniently does away with the trouble of things like fine-tuning or the trillions of ways that string theory dimensions could be folded in on themselves? Because like you imagined walking into a jacket shop and finding one that was perfect, and I'm imagining walking into a jacket shop and it's just like a tiny little store, you know, somewhere in New York on like the second floor, right? And it just has a few jackets and a few pairs of trousers, and I try on this jacket and it is like perfect. I mean, it's the exact shade of blue that I was looking for. I send it to my camera guy and he does the little hex code and he's like, man, this is like exactly the right color temperature. The sleeves are the perfect length, like uncannily perfect. Like everything is great. It's even got like a name tag from the previous owner that says Alex on it, just by pure. And I think, man, this is absolutely unbelievable. I'm saying to my friend, this is unbelievable. I can't believe every single time I look at it, something new that just unfathomably coincidental. And the friend says, okay, this is amazing. What must have happened is that there are actually like an infinite number of jackets that are sort of sat in the back. And every time somebody comes into the shop, they sort of bring one out by chance and hope that it's a match. And I suppose we must also have sort of existed in New York for an infinite amount of time so that this guarantees that at least once this goes right. And of course, you're going to be the one that gets it right, because otherwise you wouldn't be having this amazing experience. Compared to just what I naively experience, which is like one room and a jacket which fits perfectly, I would basically ask that friend to give me more reason outside of the convenience of explaining this coincidence to believe in that infinite set of jackets, to think that it's actually true, right?
I mean, in the end of the day, that's really what we do. We try to explain the confluence of data that seems to lock together with such a gratifying and impressive cohesion, just like your perfect jacket, you know, inscribed in just the right way. And
This is that jacket.
it's beautiful. I agree with your cameraman. And so what we try to do is to write down equations that will give us some insight into how it could be that there's a process that starts in the Big Bang and results in the things that we are now experiencing. Now, are there certain things that might be pure coincidence? Like, could it be pure coincidence that the gravitational constant and the electromagnetic force have just the right values to yield the qualities that allow us to exist? It could be coincidental. It could be really causative. It could have been, had the values been different, they would have caused something else. And that something else, if it had consciousness, might be in the same quandary, saying, why were the constants just the right value to allow me to exist? And yet they'd be different than the constants that we have. And so you have to be careful about seeing things and being impressed at their uniqueness when they might not be unique, and impressed at how they are designed when they may not be designed. They simply may be what they are, and you are the result of those features. They weren't set in order to get you to exist. They were set maybe by some random process, and you are the output of that random process. What we do as conscious beings, we tend to look at our environment and try to explain it in terms that somehow give us a narrative, a story. And we love stories that somehow have a purpose. But these stories may not have a purpose. It may just be random events with random numbers that yield, based on their structure, certain outputs. And we may be the output of those random qualities. If you
See, this is why I hate the fine-tuning argument. And the reason why is because they're both making logical and good case for why it's like, okay, well, let me back up, because I'm not describing this properly. They both have good points, but I will say this: Brian Greene's points about, like, maybe it's just random numbers or it's pure coincidence. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, that destroys the concept of causality and any hope of predictability, which is what he's assuming in his when you're trying to use math to do anything. So it's just an incoherent idea in the first place. And also, what he's not realizing, and this is kind of like the best way of describing it, is like, imagine I threw this pen, at you, and it hit you in the face. I don't know. I'm just trying to, like, think about something, and it hurt. And you now have to try and you're like, I'm going to figure out that pen that just hit me in the face. So you weigh it, and it has a mass of this, and then it, you look at the damage that it did to you, to your face, and you're like, it must have been going this speed because it has this amount of mass, and that plus that velocity, and it inflicts this amount of force, and it hit on this side of my face, so it was coming from that direction, and it didn't. This was the angle that it came from. Now I understand that pen. It's like, you're not thinking about, like, who threw it, like, if you're like, oh, all these, we're trying to construct a narrative and understand why all these values are the way that they are, and use these and figure out these values through math. And if we can figure out those values, and then we can figure out it all and just trace it back to the Big Bang, and then we can understand it. And it's like, but where'd that spark at the beginning come from? Like, where's that? And, like, you can't explain the beginning of causality without a cause, just because you have a very, very rigorous description of what was caused. And that, I think that was, like, a pretty decent way of explaining what the problem is like, his focus on what he thinks he needs in order to explain our world is not actually what you would need in order to explain our world. But he is right that, like, you would assume that you were in some, that basically, if something is a certain way, that it seems like it's, I guess, that we do in our minds create a story that we tend to try and naturally have an instinct to apply, intentionality behind it. But I think that's actually because it's true. That's why I think we have that. So he's not wrong in that. I think that it's wrong to dismiss, to say that because we have that, we should just ignore it. I think that that's wrong. But that's not really the point of like the best argument for God. I've talked about that before. We're not going to get too into it tonight, but just the intrinsic oneness of existence itself, by definition, implies an enclosed existence that we can perceive information within. So that information is self-referential inevitably. So like a totally self-referential system is a self-aware system. Sentience is in the inevitable fundamental nature of existence itself. But fine-tuning idea is not the best argument for God. But I do appreciate that Alex O'Connor does such a good job of like trying to steelman this. And I also really like the fact that he calls out exactly what the multiverse idea is, which is it is just an attempt to avoid a theological or a sentient intentional like explanation for the existence of the universe. But it actually doesn't really do that. It just passes the buck and delays you asking the question, because now you have to ask, where do all these universes come from? It doesn't actually prevent you from asking the question. It just pushes it further back so that you don't have to face it. And Sean Carroll's very into this because I think of this is like subconsciously. I think it's an attempt to avoid a theological explanation. And the reason for that is their concept of what it would mean if there was a theological explanation, due to their misunderstanding of religion, is leading them to be like, that can't be true. So like, let's look for any explanation that would not be that. And then you get the many worlds hypothesis. And I said this many times on here, is that's what many worlds is. And that's exactly what Alex O'Connor just called it, which, for somebody who is a self-described atheist, he does a good job. But that's what I like about, and why I wanted to show this exchange between the two of them, because I really respect both of them, because I do think that, while I think that both of them are wrong about the fundamental nature of existence, I think that both of them are genuine and honest. And I think Brian Greene feels his nature is, the way that he feels about things seems very true, and he says things that you make me feel that way. It's like, when he's like, I feel connected to the universe. It's like, if you feel connected to the universe, like, why are you denying, like, do you feel connected to this pen? I mean, actually, like, I do like this pen, but I like it because I picked it out. Like, it represents me. I feel connected to it because I picked it out very, very intentionally. But this pen, that I don't even know where it came from. It was probably just cheap, and I don't even know if I bought it. I don't feel any connection to this, and I don't feel connected to this pen. I feel like it is an extension of me. That's different from feeling connected to it. You feel connected to your spouse. You feel connected to your kids. You feel connected to your pet dog friend. But you don't feel connected to things that are not beings. And whenever you feel connected to a thing that isn't a being, you're usually personifying it. You'll name your car or something, But so when you feel connected to the universe, like, I don't know, I feel like that's the expression of his nature kind of pulling him towards truth, I feel like. But then he just goes off into like focusing on galaxies. And then Alex O'Connor, we've talked a little bit about some of his other talks, and we'll probably do some more, because every time I listen to him, I'm like, dude, you do such a good job at being rigorous and I pray one day that he finds God. I think that I ironically think that he's too focused on religion and it's in like an academic sense, and it's actually made it harder for him to recognize God around him. But I appreciate that he seems like he's honestly seeking, and that's as much as you can ask from anyone is just honesty. You can't get mad at somebody for not perceiving God. Like what should not be done by any of us, and what should actually be legitimately frustrating and is actually wrong, is if you don't perceive God and you say you do, or you do perceive God and you say you don't. And I know multiple people who do that, and so do you. And whether or not some of them doing it, that whether or not that they are doing it or not, I don't know. But like, I do know some people that I know are doing both of those things. And I'm sure that there are people that I know who I don't know that they're doing that. Maybe they don't even know. I don't know. But maybe they do. But you should definitely try and be honest. And I think both of these men engage with these topics in an honest sense, and I appreciate it. So thank you, everybody. Please hit the like button if you find this valuable. I'm going to call it in a minute. Let me just check on the chat. I'm fascinated with your backdrop. I get the snake and God. What is the diamond thing behind your head? It's called a connectrica. It is a dynamic sculpture piece of art, and I use it to describe, to showcase how our questions dictate our answers, and I also use it kind of to help show what is up with the measurement problem in physics, whether or not you see something as a particle or a wave. So for instance, I say, do you see the square? Single square. Yeah, of course, this whole thing is a single square. But now if I say, do you see the squares? Multiple. It's like, yes, you see squares within squares within squares. Here's the smallest square, and then the biggest square is the whole thing. Whether or not what question I asked you dictates the answer that you give, and then if I say, if it's a dynamic structure too, and it's moving, it's not just a static structure. And I ask, do you see the wave? Yes. And then if I ask you again and I say, do you see the helix in the center? It's like, yes. So what is this? If this is a dynamic structure that is, obviously singular by definition, but contains multiplicity, and, is at its center helical in structure, but in its movement is, waving, is moving in a wave form. What is it? Is it a wave? Is it a helix? Is it a square? Or is it squares? It's all of them. These are all structures and processes that you can perceive in this structure simultaneously, and which one you perceive is dependent upon the question that you ask. And in physics, when you're trying to measure the velocity of a particle versus the position of a particle, but you can't perceive both of them at the same time, it's because you can't think about asking where a wave is and asking how fast it's moving at the same time. You actually can't do that, because assuming that a wave has a speed at which it's moving implies that it is not in a single position. It is moving. It is constantly moving in its position. So you can't ask where is it in its position without assuming staticness, as if you're taking a picture of it, and you're what is the position of the wave now? Click. And then, but if you do that, then you're just looking at a picture, and you can't ask what is the velocity of the wave in that picture? No, now we need to start taking a video of it again. And then we can't see what its position is right then. And so physicists, the fact that they even consider this a problem is insane. I don't want to say it's insane. I hate saying that. Or I shouldn't say the words like that. It is due to not thinking about the problem itself. They are assuming that whatever they're focusing on to try and answer that or figure out this quote unquote problem is a problem. Like the assumption that there is a measurement problem to begin with is a problem. It's not, there's no problem. You know, it's like, oh, is this a wave or is it a square? We don't know. You know, is it squares or is it a wave? You know, we can't measure both, perceive both at the same time. You know, it's like asking, is a coin heads or tails? And it's like, it's both. But like, you can't look at both sides of a coin at the same time. You have to pick one. Do you want to look at the tail side or do you want to look at the head side? Like, but you can't look at both at the same time. That doesn't mean they don't, you know, they're not there. And so that's what that is. It's a tool to like show this, this concept, and show 4 perspectives of one, structure that contains singularity, multiplicity, movement, and connectedness. Causality, which is the helix in it, and then movement is the wave, and multiplicity is the squares, and singularity is the square. And these are concepts and structures that and processes that are mirrored in our world. And so that's what I use this for, is to show that. I hope that makes sense. Lies. There are no brown recluse spiders in California. I'm not in California. I'm in Texas. I moved. So yes, there are brown recluse spiders. There are recluse spiders that are basically brown recluse spiders in California, but they're not technically the right subspecies. But in Texas, there are brown recluse spiders. I just put them outside whenever there's spiders go to my house. I do try to do that, but I don't always do that. And sometimes it's just inconvenient. If it's a jumping spider, I always do it. But if it's not, and if it's a brown recluse, I pretty much always kill it. And if it's not one or the other, it depends on what's convenient for me. And I'm just being honest. And I always feel bad about killing them, no matter why I do it. And I never do it, obviously to torture or anything, because that's not the point. But like if my wife is like, oh, kill the spider in the bathroom, if it's not a jumping spider, I'll probably just flush it down the drain because it's inconvenient to put it outside, which makes me feel horrible because like I'm killing something out of convenience. It's going to say, if it survived the encounter, it'd be like, that guy is a sociopath. But I just care about my wife's feelings. I don't care more than I care about the spider. So that's why I look like a psychopath or a sociopath to the spider. It is actually well documented that California has no brown recluses. Yeah, I'm not in California though. But yeah, I'm in Texas. I doubt bugs feel anything. They at least appear to be like computer programs. Really? You haven't looked close enough at bugs if you don't think that they feel anything. It's just you're not looking close enough. Go and look close enough. Bugs absolutely have feelings. They're not just a computer program. They have to have feelings. That's why they do the same things we do. They eat. What do you think they eat? They eat things that taste good to them, and look appetizing and smell appetizing. And they mate with mates that look attractive just for the same reasons we do. And they go to hide in, from the sun when it's too hot, just like we do. And they go and they get a drink when they're thirsty, just like we do. They have to have feelings in order to do the things that they do. In California, the only scary spider is black widows. Yeah, there's tons of black widows in California. There were so many black widows. If you went outside and looked at the outside of my house when I was living in California, there were probably over almost 100 black widows on the outside of the house that I lived in. I'm not exaggerating at all. And I remember I said that to my roommate. He was like, no way, man. He had lived there longer than me. And I was like, no, dude, you just haven't looked. And he was like, prove it. I took him outside with a flashlight. He was like, okay, wow, that's really freaky. But I actually don't know if I've seen any black widows where I live now, in Texas. I know they live here, but I don't think I've seen one. I definitely have seen brown recluse spiders. This guy's a fool. Good night, folks. Peace. Hexagon hero. Well, congratulations on moving to Texas. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Please hit the like button. And I appreciate you, Hexagon hero, even though you think I'm a fool, apparently. But thank you for dropping by. And I will see you guys not next week, but the week after. And we will pick up probably with a pretty epic stream. So with that, thank you, everybody. Hit the like button, share it, and peace.